The desert sun hung low over the cracked asphalt of Route 17, casting long shadows that stretched like fingers across the empty highway. It was the kind of evening where the air shimmered with heat, carrying the faint whine of cicadas and the distant rumble of engines. Inside the dusty diner called Last Chance Stop, Olivia wiped down the counter for the 10th time that shift. Her hands raw from the cheap bleach. The place was a relic, faded neon signs buzzing faintly, vinyl stools cracked from years of weary travelers. She was 28, with calloused fingers from years of pouring coffee for drifters, but tonight something felt off. The bell above the door hadn't jingled in an hour, and the only patron was a lone biker parked outside, his Harley gleaming under the sodium lights. He'd pulled in 20 minutes earlier, helmet tucked under his arm, leather vest patched with the insignia of the Iron Vow, a faded eagle clutching a chain. Ethan. That's what he'd grunted when she asked for his order. Black coffee, no sugar. He sat at the far booth, staring out the window, his reflection in the glass showing a man etched by time. Scar above his left eye, from a long-ago brawl, jaw set like he was chewing on ghosts. Olivia had seen his type before. Road warriors carrying burdens heavier than their saddlebags. But as she refilled his mug from behind the counter, her eyes caught something in the mirror propped against his bike outside. It wasn't the sunset playing tricks. In the curved chrome, a flicker of movement. Two dark sedans idling half a mile back, their headlights off, silhouettes inside shifting like predators in wait. Her heart stuttered. She'd grown up in these parts, where the highway whispered stories of vanishings and deals gone sour. Those cars weren't lost travelers. They were hunters, the kind who tailed lone riders for easy pickings. Ethan hadn't noticed, too lost in whatever memory gripped him. Olivia's mind raced. Should she say something? Mind her own business? But then she remembered her own scars, the faded tattoo on her wrist from a promise she'd made to a brother lost to the same roads years ago. Watch out for the wanderers. She grabbed a rag, strode to his booth, and leaned in close, voice low. "Mister, you got company you don't want. 2 cars, black, hanging back on the horizon. Reflection in your mirror. Check it when you leave." Ethan's eyes met hers, sharp and unreadable, like weathered steel. He didn't flinch, just nodded once, slow. "Appreciate the heads up," he murmured, his voice gravel from too many miles and too few words. But in that glance, something shifted, a spark of old loyalty igniting. Olivia didn't know it then, but her warning wasn't just saving a stranger. It was pulling him back into a vow he'd buried deep, one that would rally his scattered brothers across state lines and unravel a web of corruption threatening dozens. Outside, the biker's engine roared to life, a deep-throated growl that echoed off the diner walls. Ethan mounted up, glancing at the mirror as Olivia had said. There they were, the sedans creeping closer, their tinted windows hiding faces that reeked of trouble. He revved harder, tires kicking up gravel as he peeled out, but not in blind flight. No, Ethan knew these stretches of road like the veins on his hands. He'd ridden them after the war, after losing his squad to a betrayal that still soured his dreams, a promise to protect the innocent, sworn in blood under desert stars. That oath had faded with time, reduced to solo runs and empty bars, until nights like this yanked it back. The sedans accelerated, engines purring with menace, closing the gap as the highway twisted into the Badlands. Dust clouds billowed behind Ethan, the wind whipping his face, carrying the metallic tang of impending rain. He radioed his comms unit, a relic patched into his vest. "Ghost to pack, trouble on 17, mile marker 42, 2 tails armed likely, need eyes." Static crackled, then voices from afar. His Iron Vow brothers, scattered but bound by the same invisible chain. In a bunker-turned garage in Nevada, Marcus, the grizzled sergeant-at-arms, slammed a fist on the table. "On it, Ghost, rallying the line." Marcus, with his prosthetic leg from the same war that scarred Ethan, owed him a life debt. The call was answered without question. Back at the diner, Olivia locked the door early, her pulse still racing. She poured herself a stale coffee, staring at the empty highway where Ethan's taillight had vanished into the dusk. Why had she spoken up? It wasn't her fight, but deep down, she knew. In a world where trust eroded like roadside cliffs, one small act could echo. Her phone buzzed, a text from her cousin, a nurse at the local clinic. Heard sirens earlier. Something big brewing? Olivia typed back, fingers trembling, unaware that her warning had just set off a chain reaction. Miles ahead, Ethan weaved through canyons, the sedans gaining. Gunshots cracked the night, warning shots shattering his side mirror. He ducked low, the Harley protesting as he pushed it harder. The reflection Olivia had spotted wasn't random. These weren't random thugs. Intel from a brother en route whispered the truth. Corrupt officials, shaking down small towns for land grabs, using hired muscle to silence witnesses. Dozens of families in the path, farmers, diner owners like Olivia, facing ruin. Ethan's past collided with the present. He'd ridden away from that life, but the promise pulled him back. "For the squad," he muttered, accelerating into a narrow pass where the cavalry would meet him. The first bikes appeared like phantoms from side roads, 5, then 10, engines thundering in unison. Iron vow riders, helmets glinting, forming a wall of chrome and resolve. The sedans faltered, swerving as the convoy closed in, not with guns blazing, but with sheer presence, a reminder that some bonds outlasted bullets. Ethan signaled, peeling off toward a hidden overlook, his brothers drawing the fire. In the chaos, a sedan spun out, crashing into scrub brush, its occupants fleeing into the dark. The other escaped, but the message was sent. By midnight, Ethan pulled into a roadside motel, the pack regrouping under flickering lights. Olivia's face lingered in his mind, not just a waitress, but a catalyst. He owed her, and through her, the promise renewed. Protect the overlooked, honor the word given. Word spread fast in their network. A nurse in the next town, a veteran mechanic, even a firefighter from the city limits. They weren't blood, but chosen, forged in fire and fidelity. Dawn broke with a pink haze over the horizon, engines idling, as the group planned their next move. Ethan's scar itched, a reminder of losses past. But for the first time in years, purpose burned clean. Olivia, back at the diner, watched the sun rise, unaware her reflection in that mirror had saved more than one life. It had reignited a legacy of quiet justice, one ride at a time. The motel parking lot was a patchwork of oil stains and faded lines, bathed in the soft glow of dawn that turned the desert sand to gold. Ethan leaned against his Harley, the engine ticking as it cooled, steam rising faintly from the exhaust like a sigh after the night's fury. His brothers encircled him, 10 strong now, their vests bearing the Iron Vow emblem, faces shadowed under helmets still clutched in gloved hands. Marcus limped forward, his prosthetic legs scraping softly against the gravel, eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting the sedans to reappear from the haze. "They'll regroup," Marcus said, voice low and steady, the kind honed from years of barking orders in foxholes. "Word from the network, those cars tie back to the sheriff's crew, shaking down the valley folk for that pipeline route. Dozens of homes in the crosshairs, families like the ones we swore to shield back in the day." Ethan nodded, rubbing the scar above his eye, the skin pulling tight like an old wound reopening. The promise he'd made under those foreign stars felt heavier now. Not just a ghost, but a chain linking him to these men, to the waitress who'd sparked it all. Olivia. Her name echoed in his thoughts, simple and unyielding, like the coffee she'd poured. He'd left her a note under his mug before riding out. Debt owed. Stay sharp. But it was more than gratitude. It was the first thread pulling him from solitude. The Iron Vow wasn't just a club, it was a covenant, born from the ashes of their unit's betrayal, where a corrupt officer had sold out their positions for a payout. They'd lost 3 that night, brothers who'd never ride again. Ethan had walked away after, vowing silence, but the oath lingered. Protect the vulnerable, honor the unspoken bonds. A radio crackled in Marcus's hand, pulling Ethan from the memory. Ghost. This is Lena from the clinic in Willow Bend. Your boy's story checks out. Those sedans match the ones harassing my patients. Farmers too scared to report, but I've got records. Vests of violence on the kids, signs of aggression in the homes. We need backup. Lena's voice was crisp, edged with the exhaustion of someone who'd patched up too many roadside victims. She wasn't Iron Vow by blood, but by choice. A nurse who'd lost her husband to the same war that scarred Ethan, now part of their extended line, tending wounds both seen and unseen. Ethan's jaw tightened. Willow Bend was 20 miles east, a cluster of weathered trailers and dusty fields where the land grab was hitting hardest. The corruption ran deep. A sheriff turning a blind eye for kickbacks, deputies acting as enforcers, pressuring holdouts to sell cheap, dozens of lives teetering, parents like Olivia's kin, scraping by on diner tips and harvest yields. "We're riding," Ethan said into the comms, his words cutting the morning chill. "Rally who you can. No guns, just presence. We expose the rot. Make it stick." The group murmured agreement, engines firing up in a symphony of low rumbles, vibrations humming through the lot like a heartbeat. They rolled out in formation, a steel serpent winding through the canyons, dust trailing in veils that caught the rising sun. Ethan led, wind slicing his face, carrying the sharp scent of sagebrush and distant rain. Flashes of the night replayed, the sedan's taillights like malevolent eyes, the crack of shots that had him swerving into shadow. But it was Olivia's warning that anchored him, the way her eyes had held steady, no fear, just resolve. He'd glimpsed her wrist tattoo in the diner's light, a faded chain linking to an anchor, symbol of her own lost brother. Promises like that didn't die, they waited, igniting when least expected. As they crested a ridge, Willow Bend came into view, a ramshackle town hugging the highway, windmills creaking lazily against the sky. Smoke curled from a central bonfire where locals gathered, faces drawn with worry. Lena waited at the edge, her scrubs dusted with road dirt, clipboard in hand. Beside her stood Javier, a veteran mechanic with grease-streaked arms and a limp from shrapnel. His garage the unofficial hub for Iron Vow repairs. "They came last night," Lena said as Ethan dismounted, her voice urgent but controlled. "2 families roughed up, signs of struggle, nothing broken but trust. The sheriff's office claims it's drifters, but we know better, pipeline companies pulling strings, and folks are folding." Javier nodded, eyes flicking to the bikes. "My shop's next. They want the land for staging. I told them no, promised my old man I'd keep it for the community." His words hung heavy, another vow echoing Ethan's own. The group spread out, not invading but integrating, handing out water, listening to stories whispered over the fire's crackle. An elderly woman, Clara, clutched Ethan's arm, her voice trembling. "My grandson saw them, lurking. We can't fight money with pitchforks." Ethan's hand covered hers steady. "You don't have to. We've got your back." Tension built as noon heat baked the ground, mirages dancing on the asphalt. Word spread like wildfire through the network. A firefighter from the county line, Tomas, en route with his truck. A teacher, Rebecca, gathering affidavits from scared parents. They weren't soldiers anymore, but the discipline remained, chosen family, bound by loyalty that outstripped blood. Ethan spotted a dust cloud approaching, another sedan, this one marked with county insignia, slowing as it neared the gathering. The sheriff's deputy stepped out, badge glinting, face hardened by authorities' false armor. "Break it up," the deputy barked, hand hovering near his belt. "No loitering, company's got rights." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but Ethan stepped forward, calm as the desert wind. "We're here to talk, not trespass. Folks got stories. Yours too, if you're listening." The deputy's eyes narrowed, recognizing the iron vow patches, the unspoken threat of numbers and honor. He radioed back, voice tight, but the line went silent. Lena's clinic contact had jammed the signal, a quiet sabotage born of necessity. The standoff stretched, sun climbing higher, shadows shortening like retreating foes. Ethan felt the weight of eyes on him, his brothers, the townsfolk, even ghosts from the past. This wasn't about one ride. It was redemption's slow burn, fulfilling the promise to stand against the tide. As the deputy retreated, tail between his legs, a cheer rose, soft at first, then swelling. Olivia's reflection in that mirror had started it. But now it was theirs, a legacy of quiet courage, saving dozens not with force, but with the unbreakable chain of word given and kept. By afternoon, plans solidified around Clara's kitchen table, maps spread amid cooling coffee. Ethan traced routes with a calloused finger, Marcus plotting diversions, Lena coordinating safe houses. The web of corruption unraveled thread by thread, each ally a link in the vow. Outside, bikes idled, ready for the next leg, the air thick with purpose. Ethan paused at the door, glancing east toward the diner, wondering if Olivia felt the echo. In a world of shifting sands, some promises endured, pulling the lost back to the light. The sun dipped toward the jagged peaks, painting Willow Bend in strokes of amber and crimson, as if the desert itself were bleeding resolve into the town. Ethan stood on the porch of Clara's weathered shotgun house, the wooden boards creaking under his boots, the air heavy with the scent of cooling earth and simmering chili from inside. The gathering had dispersed into smaller clusters, locals sharing hushed tales around tailgates, iron vow riders checking their machines with ritual precision. Marcus wiped grease from his hands on a rag, his prosthetic leg planted firm as he approached. "That deputy'll report back. They'll come harder next time, maybe with warrants, maybe worse." His eyes, shadowed by a lifetime of guarded trust, met Ethan's. "You sure about this path, Ghost? Exposing the sheriff means digging up old graves. Your grave, too." Ethan leaned against the railing, the metal warm from the day's heat, his fingers tracing the faded eagle on his vest. The promise that bound them wasn't forged in ink or oaths sworn in court. It was etched in the sand of distant dunes, where he'd pulled Marcus from a collapsing bunker, whispering, "We ride out together or not at all." That night had cost them brothers, souls left behind in the chaos of betrayal, when their own command sold positions for a briefcase of cash. Ethan had buried the rage deep, trading it for endless miles, but Olivia's warning had unearthed it like a storm wind scattering dunes. "No choice," he replied, voice steady as the horizon. "Those families aren't just numbers on a map. They're us, holding on when the world's trying to shake 'em loose." Inside, the kitchen hummed with quiet purpose. Lena spread her clipboard across the scarred oak table, her scrubs rolled to the elbows, revealing a bracelet of braided leather, a token from her late husband, another link in their chosen chain. Javier hunched beside her, his mechanic's hands sketching crude diagrams of the pipeline route, lines snaking through valleys like veins of greed. Clara bustled with mugs of strong tea, her arthritic fingers steady despite the tremor in her voice. "My grandson's room overlooks the east field. He saw 'em last week, shadows moving at dusk, marking lots with stakes. Said it felt like ghosts claiming what's ours." Her eyes, lined with years of quiet endurance, held a plea that twisted Ethan's gut. Promises like hers to safeguard the land her forebears tilled mirrored his own, fragile yet unyielding. The radio on the table crackled to life, pulling them from the maps. "Ghost, this is Thomas from the firehouse, rolling in now with 2 rigs. Heard from Rebecca at the school. Kids coming home with bruises from accidents on the job sites. Parents too broke to fight, but she's got names, dates. The company's fronting as saviors, promising jobs that never come. Thomas's voice boomed through the static, laced with the gravel of someone who'd hauled hoses into infernos and pulled families from flames. He wasn't Iron Vow by vest, but by fire, a veteran who'd crossed paths with Ethan during a wildfire rally years back, swearing then to stand if the call came. Ethan keyed the mic. "Link up at the ridge. We're building a wall here, not with iron, but truth. Get the stories straight. We'll amplify 'em." As dusk settled, the convoy swelled. Engines growled in the distance, headlights piercing the twilight like beacons. Thomas arrived first, his fire truck's red flanks dusty from the haul, followed by Rebecca in a battered pickup, her arms laden with folders thick as old grievances. She was young, mid-30s, with the fierce gaze of a teacher who'd seen too many empty desks from families displaced by progress's cruel march. "These aren't just evictions," she said, sliding into a chair, the wood groaning under the weight of her resolve. "It's erasure. The sheriff's office logs complaints as nuisances, buries them under red tape. One mother told me her boy found survey markers twisted into threats, bent like broken promises." Rebecca's words hung in the air, stirring memories in Ethan of letters never answered, brothers' tags left in the dirt. The group leaned in, the lamplight casting long shadows that danced like unspoken fears. Marcus plotted escape routes on the map, his finger tracing arroyos where bikes could vanish into the night. Lena cross-referenced her clinic notes. Vestiges of violence in the records, welts hidden under long sleeves, families too proud to name the source, but connect the dots, and it's clear. The deputies turned blind eyes for envelopes, letting the muscle do the dirty work. Javier nodded, adding, "My garage radio picked up chatter. Company reps meeting the sheriff at the old mill tonight. If we shadow 'em quiet, we get proof. Photos, voices on tape, no confrontation, just eyes wide open." Ethan felt the pull of it all, a tide dragging him from the isolation he'd armored himself in. Olivia's face flickered in his mind again, the way she'd leaned across the booth, her voice a lifeline in the diner's hum. Had she known her words would ripple this far, binding strangers into a force against the dark? He stepped outside for air, the cooling breeze carrying the faint tang of mesquite smoke from Clara's fire. Stars pricked the velvet sky, indifferent witnesses to human struggles below. Marcus joined him, clapping a hand on his shoulder. "This vow of ours, it's not about the ride, Ethan. It's the stop, standing when others run." A low rumble announced more arrivals. 3 bikes peeling from the highway, riders dismounting with the grace of old cavalry. One was Samuel, a former medic with Ethan's unit, his hands still steady from stitching wounds under firelight. Heard the call on the wire, lost too many to greed back then, won't let it claim these folks now. They clasped forearms, the gesture sealing another layer to the chain. Inside, the planning intensified, Rebecca volunteering to infiltrate the school board meeting, Thomas offering his truck as a mobile command. Tension coiled like a spring, ethical lines blurring in the heat of necessity. Was jamming signals justice or just survival? Night deepened, the house aglow with determination's quiet fire. Ethan mounted his Harley at the edge of town, engine idling like a held breath. The shadow team, himself, Marcus and Javier, would scout the mill, while the others fortified Willow Bend, gathering more voices to the chorus. As they rolled out, tires whispering over gravel, Ethan glanced back at the cluster of lights. Dozens of lives hung in the balance, not from bullets or badges, but from the erosion of trust. The promise renewed in his chest, a slow burn against the chill. Honor the overlooked, mend the broken bonds. In the rear view, Willow Bend faded, but its pull remained. A beacon in the moral night, The mill loomed on the outskirts, a skeletal relic of rusted beams and shattered windows silhouetted against the moon. Ethan killed the engine a quarter-mile out, the trio proceeding on foot through scrub that clawed at their boots. Whispers of wind carried fragments of voices from within, accents thick with authority. Words laced with dollar signs and threats veiled as incentives. "Push harder on the holdouts," a gravelly tone said, unmistakably the sheriff's. "That mechanic's shop goes first. Make it look like an accident." Ethan's blood ran cold, but he held steady. Phone recording the exchange, Javier snapping silent photos through a gap in the chain link. They retreated unseen, hearts pounding with the weight of captured truth. Back at the house, the evidence spread like a map of redemption, voices damning the corrupt, faces of the innocent waiting for vindication. Lena's eyes shone as she filed it digitally, sending bursts to allies in distant cities. "This could topple them," she murmured. Ethan nodded, the scar above his eye throbbing like a pulse. Olivia's reflection had started the unraveling. Now their chosen family would finish it, one honorable step at a time. Dawn was hours away, but the light of justice crept closer, illuminating paths long shadowed. The first hints of dawn filtered through the lace curtains of Clara's kitchen, turning the room into a mosaic of soft greys and golds. The air, thick with the aroma of fresh brewed coffee, mingling with the faint acrid tang of printer ink. Ethan sat at the head of the table, his broad shoulders hunched over the scattered evidence. Phone recordings looping in hushed tones, grainy photos capturing faces twisted in conspiracy under the mill's dim security lights. The sheriff's voice replayed, a venomous thread weaving through the static. "Wrap it up clean, no traces, no witnesses." Marcus paced nearby, his boot heels thudding rhythmically against the linoleum, prosthetic leg echoing like a metronome of unresolved tension. Javier leaned against the counter, arms crossed, his grease-stained fingers drumming a silent beat of impatience. Lena scrolled through her tablet, cross-referencing timestamps with clinic logs, her brow furrowed in the lamplight. "This ties everything," she said, voice a measured whisper that cut the room's heavy quiet. "The visits to those families align with the threats, signs of pressure, homes marked like territory. If we leak this right, it blows the lid off the pipeline deal, but it's a spark in dry grass. They'll come for us first." Her eyes met Ethan's, holding the weight of shared history. Her husband's dog tag still tucked in her pocket, a reminder of vows that outlived the grave. Rebecca nodded from her chair, folders open like wounds, pages filled with scrawled accounts from Willow Bend's edges. The school boards in their pocket too. Parents whispering about kids pulled from classes for family business, coerced into silence. We need to get this to someone clean, outside their reach. Ethan rubbed his jaw, the stubble rasping under his palm, the scar above his eye catching the light like a silvered reminder. The night scout had been clean, but the evidence burned in his chest, stirring the old promise like embers fanned to flame. He'd ridden solo for years after the betrayal, the squad's ghosts his only companions, but Olivia's warning had cracked that shell. Now, with brothers and allies gathered, the chain pulled taut. Protect the overlooked, stand against the rot that festered in shadows, yet doubt gnawed. Exposing this could drag them all under, chosen family or not. Samuel, the medic, broke the silence from the doorway, his frame filling the space like a steadfast oak. "I've got contacts in the city press, a reporter who owes me from a rally extraction years back. She'll run it raw, no filters, but we time it wrong, and it's us on the run, not them." The group murmured assent, maps refolding with crisp snaps, plans etching into the air like tire tracks in dust. Thomas arrived then, his fire truck rumbling to a stop outside, the scent of diesel wafting through the open window. He lumbered in, helmet under one arm, face etched with the soot of past blazes. Ridge is clear, no tales from the mill, but chatter on the scanner, sheriffs calling in extras from the county line. They're spooked. His words hung, a low thunder, as he poured coffee, steam curling like unspoken fears. Clara hovered at the stove, stirring a pot of oatmeal, her hands trembling slightly, but her gaze fierce. "You all eat first. Can't fight empty." In her simple act, Ethan saw the thread of their bond, nurturing the weary, holding the line when authority crumbled. As plates clattered and spoons scraped, conversation turned to the moral fork ahead. Javier pushed his bowl aside, eyes narrowing. "We ride public tomorrow, convoy through town, evidence in hand, straight to the state outpost. Force their hand without a shot." But Ethan shook his head, the weight of command settling like desert heat. Too bold. They jam roads, spin it as a gang threat. We split. One team shadows the sheriff's next meet. Another rallies the valley folk for a town hall. Truth over force. Tension rippled, ethical edges sharpening. Was division strength or fracture? Marcus halted his pace, leaning on the table. "You're walking the squad's line again, Ghost. Back then, splitting us cost lives. This vows whole or nothing." Ethan met his gaze, the room falling silent save for the tick of an old wall clock. Memories flooded. The bunker collapse, shouts lost in rubble, the promise gasped amid choking dust. "We hold together." He'd failed then, or so the nightmares whispered. But here, in this makeshift war room, redemption beckoned. "Not splitting the heart," he said, voice gravel steady, "branching the roots. Olivia saw shadows in a mirror. We see the whole web now. For her, for Clara's grandson, for every family they're grinding down, we endure." Nods circled the table, resolve hardening like cooling steel. Rebecca volunteered for the hall, her teacher's poise masking the fire of one who taught kids to question, not cower. Samuel and Lena would prep the leak, Tomas securing flanks with his rigs. Outside, the dawn chorus stirred, coyotes yipping in the distance, engines humming as riders prepped bikes under the paling sky. Ethan stepped onto the porch, air crisp with sage and promise, the horizon a canvas of possibility. The chain of loyalty thrummed in his veins, pulling disparate souls into alignment. A waitress's instinct, a nurse's records, a mechanic's grit. Dozens teetered on the edge, but in this chosen fold, justice wasn't a distant ideal. It was the ride they shared, honorable and unbreaking. By mid-morning, the split unfolded with precision. Ethan led the shadow team, Marcus, Javier, and 2 fresh riders, toward the sheriff's implied next haunt. A roadside bar on the county fringe where deals soured in neon glow. The highway blurred past, wind whipping vests like flags of defiance, dust devils dancing in their wake. Whispers on comms linked them to the hall, Rebecca's voice steady. Crowd building, 50 strong, voices rising. But as they crested a rise, brake lights flared ahead, a roadblock, county cruisers idling like sentinels, deputies milling with hands on holsters. Ethan signaled a pull-off, bikes banking into scrub with muffled roars. Peering through binoculars, he spotted the sheriff's unmarked car tucked among them, a face from the mill tapes barking orders. "They're onto the wind," Marcus muttered, sweat beading despite the chill. The dilemma peaked. Push through and risk escalation, or flank unseen. Ethan's mind raced to Olivia's steady eyes, the reflection that started it all. "We circle," he decided, voice cutting static, eyes only. Let the hall's light draw them out. The team ghosted forward, hearts pounding in sync, the moral tightrope humming beneath. Hours stretched in vigilant hush, the bar's lot filling with arrivals, suits and badges, murmurs of acceleration. Ethan's phone captured fragments, plans to clear the path by dusk, targeting holdouts with veiled force. Evidence mounted, a dam against the flood. Back at Willow Bend, cheers crackled over the line, Rebecca's town hall swelling, locals airing grievances under Thomas's watchful rigs, the sheriff's web fraying in public glare. As shadows lengthened, Ethan withdrew, the team melting into arroyos, purpose intact, the promise held, redemption's path illuminating not just the corrupt, but the souls who dared to link arms against it. If this chapter's tension gripped you, please hit that like button. It fuels these stories of unbreakable vows to keep rolling. The afternoon sun beat down on the arroyo like a relentless forge, turning the dry riverbed into a furnace of cracked earth and whispering thorns. Ethan crouched behind a jagged outcrop of red rock, his breath shallow, the metallic tang of sweat mixing with the dust that clung to his skin. The shadow team's bikes were hidden deeper in the scrub, engines silenced, but the vibration of their idling pulses still thrummed faintly through the ground. Marcus knelt beside him, binoculars pressed to his eyes, the lenses glinting like wary sentinels. Javier flanked them, phone steady in his grip, capturing the roadblock's tableau. Cruisers angled in a crude V, deputies lounging against hoods with the casual arrogance of men who believed their badges untouchable. "They're waiting for someone," Marcus murmured, his voice a low rumble that blended with the distant hum of traffic. The sheriff's car sat central, its driver, a burly figure from the mill tapes, pacing with a radio to his ear, gestures sharp as accusations, whispers carried on the wind, fragments of plans to handle the rally at Willow Bend, words like dispersal force and evacuate holdouts, laced with the cold calculus of coercion. Ethan's scar itched under the heat, a phantom pull from old wounds, reminding him of the bunker nights when choices like this had splintered lives. Push forward, and they risked the very families they aimed to shield. Retreat, and the evidence stayed shadows, not substance. The vow tugged at him. Honor demanded balance, truth over fury. Javier's camera clicked softly, framing shots of license plates and side conversations, each image a thread in the unraveling web. "Got the sheriff's deputy from last night," he said, zooming in on a face twisted in frustration. "Talking payouts, companies upping the ante for compliance." The mechanic's hands, calloused from wrenches and wars, held steady, but his eyes betrayed the fire of one who'd promised his father to guard the land's soul. Ethan nodded, keying his comms with a gloved thumb. "Hall status, Rebecca." Static hissed, then her voice cut through, clear amid the crowd's murmur, "Holding strong." Tomas's rigs are parked like walls, folks pouring out stories. Clara's grandson just spoke, said he saw the stakes twisted into shapes that scared him. The air's electric, they're demanding answers. The transmission painted Willow Bend in Ethan's mind, the town square alive with raised voices. Rebecca's folders passed hand to hand like sacred texts. Tomas's fire trucks a red bulwark against any intrusion. It was the chosen family's quiet power at work, not thunder, but the steady drum of shared resolve. Yet here, in the arroyo's hush, doubt coiled like a rattler. The roadblock shifted. A new arrival peeled in, a sleek company van disgorging suits in crisp shirts, briefcases swinging like pendulums of power. The sheriff emerged, clapping shoulders with false camaraderie, their huddle a knot of corruption under the open sky. Ethan motioned the team closer, inching through the scrub on bellies, thorns snagging leather like desperate pleas. They crested a low ridge, close enough to hear the words now, snatches of strategy to raid the hall under pretense of public safety, framing the iron vow as agitators. "Make it look like they started it," the sheriff growled, his laugh a bark that echoed off the rocks. Ethan's blood surged, visions of Olivia's diner flashing, her warning simple and sharp, igniting this chain. He couldn't let it fracture here. "Record everything," he whispered to Javier, then to Marcus. "We need a diversion. Quiet, draw 'em east, without a chase." Marcus's eyes narrowed, the prosthetic legs shifting as he calculated risks, memories of their squad's last stand flickering unspoken between them. Like the flank in 09, Costas Reyes. The name hung, a ghost in the heat. But Marcus nodded, pulling a flare from his pack. Old school, no trace. As the huddle broke, Marcus sparked it low, the flare arcing into a distant gully with a soft whoosh. Smoke blooming like a false alarm. Heads turned, radios crackled, and the roadblock mobilized. Cruisers peeling out toward the phantom threat, leaving gaps in their line. The shadow team slipped through, hearts hammering, circling wide to the bar's shadowed flank. The lot was emptying, patrons spilling onto the porch with beers in hand, oblivious to the undercurrent. Ethan dismounted silently, blending into the lengthening shadows. Phone extended to catch the tail end of a deal, envelopes exchanged, nods sealing fates. One suit glanced their way, suspicion flickering, but Javier's quick pivot masked them as drifters nursing sodas. Back in the arroyo, regrouping under a mesquite sparse cover, the weight of the take settled. Javier synced files, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. This nails 'em. Timestamps match Lena's logs, faces to the threats. But triumph soured as comms buzzed. Rebecca's urgent whisper. Trouble inbound. Scanners lit up. Deputies rerouting from your flare. Crowds tense. Clara's holding the line, but kids are scared. Ethan's grip tightened on his handlebars, the moral crossroads sharpening. The evidence was gold, but deploying it meant vulnerability, exposed too soon, and retaliation hit the innocent first. Marcus clapped his shoulder, voice steady. The promise isn't clean wins, Ghost. It's the stand. We ride back, link with the hall, drop this bomb together. They mounted up, engines whispering to life, the convoy a silver thread weaving through twilight's veil. The wind carried sage and resolve, whipping Ethan's vest as Willow Bend's lights pricked the horizon like defiant stars. Flashes of the chosen fold replayed. Lena's bracelet glinting in lamplight. Samuel's steady hands prepping leaks. Thomas's rigs as unyielding shields. Olivia's reflection had sparked it, but this was their fire now, burning away corruption's grasp, saving dozens through loyalty's quiet forge. As they crested the final rise, the town hall's glow swelled, voices rising in a chorus of reclaimed power. The sheriff's web trembled, threads snapping under the weight of truths long buried. Dusk deepened into velvet night, the square alive with torchlight and murmured defiance, families clustered like roots seeking water. Ethan pulled in at the edge, dismounting to a wave of nods from Thomas, who guarded the perimeter, with arms crossed over his turnout gear. Rebecca met them halfway, eyes bright with the hall's momentum. They tried to crash it, deputies circling, but the crowd held. Your timing's perfect. Inside Clara's expanded gathering, the air hummed with purpose, locals poring over maps, children drawing stakes as warnings on scrap paper. Lena integrated the new files seamlessly, her tablet a beacon. Corroborates everything. Sheriff can't bury this now. Ethan stood at the room's heart, the evidence projected on a makeshift screen from Javier's phone, voices damning, faces exposed, gasps rippled, then resolve-hardened faces worn by worry. Clara gripped his arm, whispering, "For my grandson, for all of us." The vow echoed in Ethan's chest, redemption's warmth cutting the chill, promises endured, binding the lost into unbreakable alliance. As midnight neared, plans crystallized. Upload to safe channels at dawn, rally more allies from the network. The fight wasn't over, but in this circle of chosen kin, justice's dawn broke clear, one honorable link at a time. The midnight air in Willow Bend Square hung thick with the scent of burning sage from Clara's fire pit, flames flickering like hesitant confessions across the faces gathered there. Ethan moved through the crowd, his boots crunching softly on the gravel, the weight of the projected evidence still echoing in the murmurs that rippled outward. The makeshift screen, a bedsheet strung between two pickup beds, glowed with frozen frames. The sheriff's sneer mid-sentence, envelopes changing hands under the bar's neon haze. Locals leaned in, eyes wide with a mix of fury and fragile hope, their whispers building into a low hum that vibrated through the night like an engine warming up. Rebecca stood at the center, her voice steady as she fielded questions, folders tucked under one arm like a shield. "This isn't just talk," she said, gesturing to the images. "It's proof, names, times, the whole rotten chain. We send it out at first light, and the state has to listen." Thomas nodded from his post by the fire truck, his silhouette broad against the stars, arms folded as he scanned the perimeter. The rig's lights cast long shadows, turning the square into a stage where defiance played out in hushed tones. Children huddled near their parents, wide-eyed but unafraid now, the earlier fear chased away by the collective stand. Clara's grandson clutched a drawing in his small fist, a twisted stake turned into a broken chain, his voice piping up earlier with a clarity that had silenced the room. Ethan slipped to the edge, where Marcus waited in the gloom of a parked bike, prosthetic leg extended as he cleaned his knife with deliberate strokes. "Hall's holding, but the wires buzzing," Marcus said, not looking up, the blade catching firelight in silver flashes. "Scouts report cruisers circling the outskirts, sheriffs pulling strings, calling it a disturbance. They'll hit before dawn if we don't move." His words carried the gravel of old campaigns, the promise they shared from bunker nights pulling taut like a guy line in wind. Ethan felt it too, the scar above his eye pulsing with the night's pulse, memories of lost brothers surfacing like dust devils in the calm. Olivia's warning had ignited this, a simple reflection unraveling greed's grip. But sustaining it demanded more than evidence. It required the unyielding loyalty of those who'd chosen this path. Lena approached from the house, tablet in hand, her scrubs swapped for a worn jacket against the chill. "Files are encrypted, ready to burst to the reporter and beyond. But Javier's got a glitch, signals spotty from the roadblock interference." Her eyes, shadowed by exhaustion, met Ethan's with the quiet fire of one who'd mended more than flesh. Samuel flanked her, medic's bag slung over his shoulder, ready for whatever fallout dawn might bring. The chosen fold tightened here, threads of vows weaving through strangers. Javier's grease-blackened hands syncing backups on a laptop balanced on a tailgate, Tomas's rigs humming like guardians. Ethan nodded, voice low. "We fortify. No one's leaving alone. If they come, we meet 'em with words first, presence second." Tension coiled as the fire popped, embers spiraling upward like fleeting prayers. Whispers from the crowd turned to plans, farmers vowing to block access roads with tractors at sunrise, Rebecca coordinating calls to distant kin for amplification. But the night fractured with a distant growl. Engines approaching from the east, headlights slicing the dark like accusatory beams. The square stilled, breaths held as cruisers crested the rise, 4 strong, lights flashing in silent warning, no sirens yet. The sheriff's car led, its bulk parting the night, doors swinging open to disgorge deputies with flashlights sweeping like searchlights. "Disperse now!" The sheriff bellowed from his perch, megaphone amplifying his bark over the crackle of the fire. "This is an unlawful assembly. Clear out or face charges." His face, illuminated by the dash glow, twisted with the false righteousness of cornered power, but his eyes darted, nervous, aware of the evidence humming in the air. Deputies fanned out, hands on belts, forming a loose cordon that pressed the crowd back. Gasps rose, a mother pulling her child close, but Ethan stepped forward, hands open at his sides, the iron vow eagle on his vest, catching the cruiser lights like a badge of its own. "We're not breaking laws," Ethan called, voice carrying clear and unyielding, cutting through the tension like a knife through fog. "We're speaking truth. You've got records of your own making, threats, shakedowns. Folks here have stories that match every frame." Murmurs swelled behind him, the crowd shifting but not scattering, Thomas's rigs blocking one flank, bikes forming another. The sheriff's gaze locked on Ethan, recognition flickering, the lone rider from the diner tail, now the spark of this blaze. You biker trash think you can waltz in and play hero? This town's business, not yours. But his words faltered as Rebecca held up her tablet, the projected images flickering back to life on the sheet, voices from the mill tape spilling out. Push harder. Make it look like an accident. Chaos simmered, deputies advancing, but the square held, Clara's voice rising first, then others. A chorus of grievances pouring forth like a dam breach. You marked my field. My boys hurt from your visits. The sheriff barked orders, but hesitation crept in, badges glinting under the stars as numbers and resolve turned the tide. Marcus moved to Ethan's side, a silent wall, while Javier slipped through the press, uploading a teaser clip to a secure line. First light bleeding into the east now, the horizon paling. Lena whispered coordinates to allies, the network humming alive. More riders inbound from the Badlands, a lawyer from the city prepping filings. The standoff stretched, wind whispering through the scrub, carrying the faint whine of approaching bikes, reinforcements drawn by the vow's call. The sheriff's face paled as taillights multiplied in the distance, a convoy of chrome resolve thundering closer. He retreated to his car, radioing frantically, the cordon fracturing under the weight of unyielding eyes. Ethan felt the shift, redemption's quiet surge. Not victory yet, but the promise manifesting, binding the overlooked into a force that corruption couldn't shatter. As the first rays crested, painting the square in gold, the cruisers peeled away, tails between legs, leaving the crowd to a dawn of reclaimed ground. Ethan watched them go, chest tight with the Knight's Forge, the chain of loyalty glowing warmer than the rising sun. Dozens stood taller now, families no longer shadows, but pillars in the light. The upload began, truths racing across wires, the web collapsing under honor's steady pull. But whispers on the comms hinted at retaliation's shadow lingering. The ride wasn't over, just turning toward its moral crest. In the square's hush, as coffee passed hand to hand, Ethan glimpsed the horizon. Endless road, unbreakable bonds, the reflection of a waitress's courage echoing still. The first rays of dawn sliced across Willow Bend Square like golden blades, chasing the night's shadows into retreat. The air crisp with the promise of renewal and the faint, lingering smoke from Clara's fire pit. Ethan stood at the edge of the gathering, his breath steadying as the last cruiser taillights vanished down the highway, swallowed by the haze. The crowd exhaled collectively, a wave of murmurs rising like steam from cooling engines, relief laced with the electric hum of hard-won ground. Rebecca lowered her tablet, the projected images fading into the sheet's folds, but their echo lingered in every face. The sheriff's web exposed, threads of corruption snapping under the weight of shared truths. Dozens of families clustered closer now, hands clasping across generational lines, the square no longer a place of whispers, but a forge of quiet triumph. Clara emerged from the throng, her grandson trailing with wide eyes, the drawing of the twisted stake clutched like a talisman. She gripped Ethan's arm, her voice soft but unyielding, etched with the endurance of one who'd tilled this soil through storms. You gave us the light to see clear. My boy's safe because of it, no more shadows lurking. Ethan nodded, the scar above his eye catching the sun's warmth, a reminder of scars that bound rather than broke. The vow that had pulled him from solitary miles pulsed stronger here, woven through the chosen family around him. Marcus, sheathing his knife with a satisfied click. Javier, syncing the final uploads on his laptop, balanced on a tailgate. Lena's tablet pinging with confirmations from distant allies. This wasn't blood's call. It was honor's, forged in the reflection of a waitress's instinct miles back at the diner. Tomas lumbered forward from his fire truck, the red flanks gleaming like beacons, his turnout gear dusted with the night's grit. Scanners quiet now, sheriff's hunkered down, but the wire's alive. That reporter Samuel knows? She's running the lead story by noon, full spread." His words carried the rumble of someone who'd stared down blazes and badgers alike, a veteran who's promised to pull others from the flames, extended beyond the hose. Samuel joined them, medic's bag slung low, his steady hands already packing aid kits for the road ahead. "Leaked clean, no traces back to us. The state's mobilizing investigators. Pipeline deals on ice till they sift the mess." Nods circled the group, resolve settling like dew on the morning grass, the ethical tightrope they'd walked now a bridge to justice. As the sun climbed, the square transformed into a hub of motion. Locals dismantling the setup with purposeful hands, tractors rumbling to life for symbolic blocks on access roads, Rebecca coordinating follow-up calls with the poise of a teacher turning lessons into legacy. Ethan felt the pull of the horizon, the endless stretch of Route 17 calling, but Marcus clapped his shoulder, prosthetic leg planted firm in the gravel. "We held the line, Ghost. Like the bunker, but this time no one left behind." The memory flashed, choking dust, whispered oaths. But here it redeemed, the betrayal's sting dulled by this circle's fidelity. Javier wiped his brow, grinning faintly. "My shop's secure. No more stakes in the night. Owe you for spotting the rot before it rooted deeper." Word rippled through the network like a chain reaction. The nurse at the clinic, noting fewer anxious visits. The teacher, seeing fuller classrooms. Farmers breathing easier as survey crews packed up under scrutiny's glare. Olivia's warning, glimpsed in that chrome mirror, had saved more than Ethan's ride. It had ignited a safeguard for dozens, unraveling a scheme that preyed on the vulnerable. Ethan mounted his Harley, the engine's low growl vibrating through his bones, a symphony joined by the others as bikes lined up in loose formation. Lena approached last, her bracelet glinting in the light, a token of losses turned to purpose. "The records will stand. Vestiges of pressure documented, families healing, ride safe, we've got the watch here." They rolled out as the town stirred to life. Engines thundering in unison, dust veiling their departure like a curtain call. Ethan led, wind slicing his face with sage-scented clarity, the Badlands unfolding ahead in waves of ochre and shadow. Flashes replayed, the diner's neon buzz, the sedan's predatory creep, the square's defiant glow. Redemption wasn't a solitary blaze, but a shared ember, kindled by one small act and fanned by loyalty's breath. Marcus rode flank, Javier scouting ahead, the Iron Vow's eagle patches catching the sun like emblems of endurance. Behind, Willow Bend shrank to a cluster of lights, but its spirit rode with them, promises kept, honors reclaimed. Miles out, Ethan pulled to an overlook, the highway snaking below like a vein of possibility. He radioed back to the fold, "Web's broken, dawn's ours." Affirmatives crackled, Samuel prepping aid runs, Thomas standing sentinel, Rebecca's voice weaving education into the victory. The corruption's fall echoed wider, state probes launched, the sheriff's office under siege, families no longer whispers in the wind, but voices amplified. Ethan's scar eased, the old ghosts quieter, replaced by the warmth of bonds chosen and proven. Olivia would hear soon, perhaps over diner coffee, the tale of a reflection that bent fate. As noon heat shimmered the asphalt, the convoy dispersed toward home bases, garages, clinics, firehouses, each carrying the Vow's flame. Ethan lingered a moment, engine idling, gazing east where the diner waited. In a world of eroding trusts, some chains held eternal, pulling the weary into light. The ride continued, not in fury, but in the silent honor of lives lifted, dozens saved by the unbreakable pull of word given and heart kept. Thank you for riding this journey with us. If these tales of quiet courage and chosen bonds resonate, hit that subscribe button and join the pack. We've got more roads ahead, more promises to honor.